Hello, everybody. Welcome, aloha, and welcome aboard to day 3 of ACEEE's 2020 summer study, the year in which we went virtual. I'm Gene Rodriguez with ICF, but that's not important right now. I'm also Gene Rodriguez with ACEEE, but that's not important right now. What is important to each and every one of you out there is that today I'm the guy who's going to show you how, with the aid of one finger, you can make this the most important, impactful day of your lives. So if you're ready for that opportunity, if you're ready for that challenge, get your index digit ready. First, we're going to cover a couple of housekeeping items, then we're going to move right into our program. So first things first, if this is your first day with us at the summer study, welcome. Please note the following housekeeping items. Your screen size is customizable. Please feel free to make it as large or small as you like. The instructions you read right there. Presentations from this event can be downloaded as PDFs from the presentation list in the menu. And all of you out there as attendees will be in listen-only mode, but you can and should submit your questions through the Q&A box at any time during the webcast. The presenters will respond to your questions at the end of each session. And all presentations will be available for on-demand viewing within a few days on this engagement hub. Later this afternoon, after the panel sessions, informal sessions and social times will be offered through Zoom links. We certainly hope that you'll participate. So with those housekeeping items out of the way, let's move on to a moment of gratitude. Thank you to our gold level sponsors who made this year's event possible. E for the Future, Energize Connecticut, Eversource, National Grid, SMUD, SoCal Gas, and United Illuminating. Joining them are our silver level sponsors, ComEd, the Energy Coalition, Energy Trust of Oregon, Johnson Controls, NIA, On Semiconductor, Samsung, and TRC. And finally, last but not least, we have Guidehouse, New York Power Authority, Opinion Dynamics, and BEIC as our bronze level sponsors. So now let's get on to the opportunity that I'm here to present to you today. Ready? Here we go. I'm here to talk to you today about the Linda Latham Scholarship Fund. For those of you who aren't aware of what this is, it is probably one of the most important fundraising activities that ACEEE undertakes. As part of the more than 600 people who are attending summer study this year, 20 of them, 20 for 2020, are Linda Latham Scholars, promising young people who are studying and learning and developing their skills so that they can be part of the next wave of energy efficiency. All you have to do to make this the most important, impactful day of your life is anywhere at any time along the day is push on the donate button that you should see on your screen somewhere. If you don't see the donate button, don't panic. You can find it in the widgets portion by just pushing on the $sign. Any contribution at all, no matter how large or how small, helps to get both college graduate and undergraduate students in accredited schools here to the summer study so that they can learn more about how they can be more impactful. They can network with you and become part of our community, our cause, our mission together. So if you would do that for me, take that one finger, take that one moment, make one wise and virtual choice to donate to the Linda Latham Scholarship Fund, we can get more people here, just like the ones I'll introduce to you right now. Won't you please welcome Akesh, who is studying at UC Berkeley, Alex, a master's candidate at the Imperial College London Business School, where he's majoring in finance with a concentration in energy and sustainable investing. Anayo, who is a research assistant and PhD candidate at Brandenburg University of Technology in Germany. He's also currently a visiting scholar in the International Energy Analysis Department at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. Arthur, who is a graduate student in the Energy and Resources Group at UC Berkeley, who has a passion for sustainable business and who has already worked on as an activist promoting the implementation of sustainable innovation zones. 4 more of our scholars. You see Carolina, who is a PhD fellow of civil and environmental engineering at the University of Washington. She's focused on how to improve weatherization assistance programs to make the quality of life for our low-income residents better and more healthy through energy efficiency. Elizabeth, a joint degree candidate at Yale University, pursuing her master's in business administration and a master in environmental management. She has already worked in the energy efficiency space and has come back to study more to get even more skilled up to do even more great things in her career. Emmanuel, a senior at Howard University, is from Lagos, Nigeria. He's majoring in electrical engineering and minoring in computer science. In past summers, he's already interned as a software engineer in data intelligence roles. We have Faiza, as a second-year Master of Public Administration candidate at the Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs, concentrating in energy and the environment. She's already interned in trying to bring more renewable energy into the marketplace. For more of our scholars, you'll see we have Florencia. Florencia is from Bahia Blanca, Argentina. She has a PhD in economics, specialized in energy economics. And she's interested in bringing energy efficiency to developing countries in the residential sector. Isabel is a PhD candidate architect with a master's in energy management and renewable resources by University Technological de Monterrey. John is pursuing an MPP in energy and environmental policy from the University of Maryland. He's already conducted extensive research into zero carbon building policies. Carl is a first-year doctoral student at the University of Michigan in the School of Environment and Sustainability. He's already earned his master's degree from the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy, where he focused on energy and housing policy. Next up to bat, we have Caitlin. Caitlin is a PhD fellow in behavioral science for Sustainable Systems program at the University of Virginia. She researches behavioral designs in energy and complex systems. Marley is from the Republic of Palau and is currently finishing her last year as a law student at the Lewis and Clark Law School in Portland, Oregon. She's interested in learning more about energy efficiency policy and implementation, and especially looking for policies and practices that could work for a small island nation such as her own. You'll see down at the bottom of this page, Mohammed. Mohammed is a sustainability professional with a keen interest in conservation, efficiency, policy analysis, and environmental governance. Currently, he's a doctoral student in the Energy and Environmental Policy session of University of Delaware with a research focus on the adoption of energy sufficiency. And then Nick rounds out this group. Nick assists the Sustaino group with analyzing data to do better understanding of potential growth opportunities that drive a successful triple bottom line. As a carbon neutrality fellow, Nick gained experience in the decarb realm during a year-long immersion with the University of California's Carbon Neutrality Initiative. And rounding out our Linda Latham scholars, our 20 for 2020, we go to Reese. Reese is entering his final year of his master's program in energy systems at part of the UC Davis's Energy Graduate Group. He's focusing on the science and policy of building decarbonization through retrocommissioning and electrification. Following Reese is Tim. Tim is eager to shape the sustainable energy transition. He's about to start his postgrad studies in environmental sustainability at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland this September. Toby has graduated from the Bloomberg School of Public Health in Baltimore this May with a Master of Health Science in Environmental Health and Engineering with a concentration in community-based public health and risk sciences and public policy. And finally, last but certainly not least, is Tomika. Tomika is a PhD fellow in the Behavioral Science for Sustainable Systems program at the Convergent Behavioral Scientist Initiative in the University of Virginia. Her research interests revolve around the circular economy, sustainability, and the adaptive reuse of buildings. So as you can see, as these 20 bright young stars of energy efficiency prove out, as you should feel in your heart, the most important thing you can do today is to donate. Give a little, give a lot, just give, gosh darn it. That is what I want you to do. That is what I need you to do. And that is what you know you want to do. We've made it easy for you. The donate button should be on your screen. Please give, and please help us get another 20, or let's go for 21 next year. Let's get 22 2 years from now. Let's get more of these bright shining stars of energy efficiency to become part of our community and to make a difference in the world. So with that last ask, let me turn it over to Steve Nadell, who's going to take you right into 3 tremendous plenary speakers that we have lined up for you today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gene. I appreciate your recognizing all the scholars. This is the next generation of efficiency leaders. I know we have quite a few people participating and even presenting at the conference who have been Linda Latham scholars in the past. So this morning, our third plenary, we are going to be talking about advancing energy efficiency in today's challenging times. As I'm sure everybody knows, these have been challenging times with COVID, with the recession that COVID has brought us into, with much attention on increasing racial equity in response to problems in Minneapolis and many other places. These are challenging times, but these can also be an opportunity to use energy efficiency to help address some of these problems. I'm not saying it's going to solve them all, but in many cases, we can be of help. We have 3 speakers today to talk a bit about this, and then we'll have a discussion and take your questions. Our first speaker, we're going to start at the federal level, is Representative Paul Tonko. He is a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from New York State's 20th Congressional District, which is the greater Albany area. And Paul is also chair of the House Subcommittee on Energy and Environmental, oops, sorry, I'm reading the wrong notes, on environment and climate change. Sorry, Paul. Our second speaker will go down to the state level. It's Vicki Hackett, who is a deputy commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. And then our third speaker will be Kim Havey, who's the sustainability director of the city of Minneapolis in the land of 10,000 Lakes, Minnesota. With that, let me turn it over to Paul for his opening remarks.
Hey, thank you so much, Gene. Thank you, Steve, and the entire ACEEE staff for the opportunity to join the panel today. And Vicki and Kim, look forward to sharing the hour with you. Thank you for your expertise and the great work you do. Steve just mentioned challenging times. Well, there's no doubt that we're living through challenging times. The public health crisis, the associated economic downturn, the climate crisis, and the growing recognition that we must address our nation's history of injustices, particularly racial injustice. So as we think about how these challenges intersect and how local, state, and federal governments should best respond, I see a major role for energy efficiency to complement, if you will, our solutions. We come together to rise to these very different and very difficult, perhaps, challenges. But before we dig into specific efficiency policies, I would like to provide a brief update on the situation in D.C. as it relates to our response to COVID-19, which I believe will have certainly big implications for today's discussion. Our nation continues to pass grave milestones in COVID-19 cases and COVID-19 deaths. Until we have a comprehensive federal response that truly unites America in the face of this pandemic, our results will remain subpar, and our pain and our loss will continue to be far greater than is necessary. And this delay in responding to the virus will only cause further delay to begin a meaningful and sustained economic recovery. More than 3 months ago now, the House of Representatives recognized this growing challenge and passed what we labeled the HEROES Act, a comprehensive rescue plan that delivers critically needed aid for struggling American families, frontline and essential workers, and communities across our great nation, while investing in the public health infrastructure that will indeed help us keep COVID in check. Among other provisions, the HEROES Act included nearly $1 trillion for state, local, territorial, and tribal governments that desperately need funds to pay the healthcare workers, firefighters, emergency responders, teachers, and other vital workers who keep us safe and are in danger of losing their jobs. While the federal government has important programs, including many funding incentives, a lot of best efficiency work, including many of the most innovative programs, are being led by state and local governments. I know we're going to hear about some of these exciting efforts later this morning, but as long as these state and local budget issues persist, we risk cuts to or loss of these amazing efforts from cities and from our states. At a time when the clean energy transition is so important, we cannot risk undermining state and local energy agendas or the local jobs or benefits to low-income Americans that they do indeed create. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a deal yet with the administration on a package of this type, but I do hope people will keep this in mind, how COVID-related budget challenges may affect state and local efficiency efforts during today's discussion. Similarly, COVID-related job losses have disproportionately impacted efficiency businesses. There have been hundreds of thousands of efficiency jobs lost since the month of March, and the recovery of these jobs has been sluggish thus far. I think it is critically important that the federal government plays a major role in restarting the sector and getting these people back to work as soon as it is safe to reopen our economy. And finally, we know there are tens of millions of newly unemployed Americans. People are struggling to pay their bills. And it's an important reminder of the cost-effective savings that efficiency can provide. That is why the House of Representatives has put an added emphasis on programs that target low-income households. The Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program is oversubscribed during good times, and we're going to need to put more money into utility bill assistance in the near term. I think that's a given. And so we should keep in mind the ways efficiency investments can support our collective justice and equity goals as well. Looking forward in the months ahead, we will shift our attention from immediate pandemic response to economic recovery to enable us to build back stronger, better, more resilient. So additional funding for LIHEAP and the Weatherization Assistance Program should be top priorities as we think about how we can indeed make safe and stronger our struggling families' homes in the healthiest and most efficient and effective manner, including safety. While the administration may not agree, I believe there is a growing recognition that there are great opportunities for economic recovery and job creation in clean energy, building resilient infrastructure, retrofitting buildings, incentivizing advanced manufacturing, including strengthening domestic supply chains and doing environmental remediation. Certainly a litany of functions and goals that so many in the efficiency arena embrace. The first component of this effort to promote a sustainable United States economic recovery was H.R. 2, the Moving Forward Act, which passed the House last month. This package would make comprehensive investments in our nation's infrastructure. I do believe very strongly that we need to take holistic approaches to modernizing our infrastructure, which means investing in our grid, investing in our water systems, our broadband, and yes, investing in our buildings, in addition to our roads and bridges. This package includes several items which I believe might be of interest. It includes several important clean energy tax credits, including an extension and an expansion of the credit for residential efficiency improvements. It would allow home energy audits to be eligible and restart the lifetime cap on using the credit, which many homeowners have already hit. The bill also extends the commercial building energy efficiency tax deduction through 2025. In addition to these important tax provisions, the package truly recognizes buildings as an essential part of our nation's infrastructure and seeks to modernize our existing buildings. Now, this means not just improving their efficiency, but also their resilience to extreme weather, their health and safety by addressing indoor air quality, and their connectivity by improving access to broadband. One amendment that was adopted would invest over $18 billion to support modernizing critical facilities. That would include our hospitals, schools, and public safety buildings. We have seen the importance of these buildings during this given pandemic. Another amendment would establish a national green bank. Several state banks, such as that in Connecticut, have been very successful in supporting efficiency projects and accessing financing. This proposal would be able to support establishment and expansion of existing state and local green banks while also financing projects of its own. H.R. 2 also included a bill that I've worked on for many years to improve the Department of Energy's Weatherization Assistance Program to finance more low-income residential retrofits. Not only would this bill help get more money into the program, it would allow for weatherization services to more easily adapt to incorporate emerging technologies and allow for reweatherization of homes after that 15-year threshold. And we have reauthorized the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program, which successfully channeled money to local governments during the 2000 Recovery Act for clean energy priorities. This can be used for everything from audits to EV infrastructure to streetlight conversion. It is flexible, and certainly it allows each city to decide on what it needs most. These are just a handful of the provisions included in this comprehensive package, and I truly believe that this can be a model for future federal investment, which will improve our economic competitiveness and modernize our infrastructure while, in fact, addressing, so importantly, climate pollution. Being realistic about the Senate's priorities, it may not be possible to enact many of these provisions this year, but I am hopeful, very hopeful, they could become a fundamental component of future climate legislation, which we are hoping and preparing to advance next year, if the opportunity presents itself. To that end, while H.R. 2 is a good start, Congress is working on many other ideas to establish a long-term framework to achieve our national clean energy and climate goals. The Energy and Commerce Committee, on which I serve, announced a goal of achieving economy-wide net zero greenhouse gas emissions by no later than 2050. Since that announcement, we have been holding hearings to examine the challenges and opportunities in reaching that ambitious, but I believe scientifically necessary target. And we are committed to looking at every tool across every sector to get there. We have learned a lot during this process. For example, our buildings hearing and our industrial sector hearing demonstrated just how these sectors are interconnected. In many cases, industrial products are difficult to decarbonize, and this would include building and construction materials like cement and steel. Unlike operational emissions, embodied carbon emissions in buildings are locked in place from day one. They cannot be reduced through retrofits or new energy-efficient technologies. Embodied carbon is estimated to represent nearly 1/2 of emissions from new constructions between now and the year 2050. So finding ways to produce low-emissions cement and steel in a cost-competitive way would be essential, will be totally essential to achieving our goals. It was an important reminder of why comprehensive action is necessary to decarbonize our entire economy. But I believe the most important takeaway across all sectors has been that efficiency needs to be our first option. Efficiency certainly could deliver over 40% of the emissions cuts needed to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement. In January, we released a draft bill known as the Clean Future Act. I believe this draft can serve as the beginning of a legislative effort in the future. And many of its provisions have already passed the House as part of that infrastructure package that I mentioned earlier, including weatherization, residential efficiency rebates, and public building retrofits. Our draft also includes some regulatory policies, such as strengthening model building codes and DOE's Appliance Efficiency Standards program. Obviously, we do not know what will happen in November, but it is my hope that a new administration, one that embraces decarbonization, that understands science and respects it, and that really commits to a climate agenda, will come into office and prioritize a clean energy-focused economy recovery package, which can truly put millions of Americans back to work in good-paying jobs, while also making us a more just and equitable society. And I do believe that investments in efficiency, modernizing our public infrastructure and retrofitting homes of people that cannot afford to do so, will be key to jumpstarting this agenda. So let me thank you for this opportunity, for the invitation to join together virtually. I'm looking forward to hearing everyone else's presentations, and I would be happy to hear thoughts and questions about our ongoing work in Congress. Let's go forward with a sound investment in energy efficiency, and let's truly see it, energy efficiency, as our fuel of choice. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you very much, Representative Tonko. For all the audience members, if you do have questions, a few of you have typed it into the Q&A box, but more should do so. We will take questions for all three speakers at the end. But Representative Tonko is a particularly appropriate person to talk about these issues. He's actually an engineer and has a long history in energy efficiency, including as president of the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Sorry about that. So he really understands these issues and is a great leader for these efforts. With that, let's move down to the state level, and Vicki Hackett from the state of Connecticut, who in particular will be talking about energy efficiency through a COVID-19 lens. Vicki, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Steve. And I just want to say well, first of all, good afternoon. I think it's exactly 12 o'clock. So good afternoon, everybody. And thank you so much, Representative Tonko, for updating us on all of these really forward-thinking federal initiatives. And it's just really exciting to hear, all of the potential that we might be able to achieve there. So, if there's one thing that we've learned this year, it's that we need to be adaptable in our development of state policy and our implementation of our energy efficiency programs. So between the economic and health impacts of COVID-19, major storms and outages that many of us have recently faced, rising electric costs, we have many lenses through which to view our policies and our programs. And right now, our driving priority in Connecticut in efficiency is focusing on energy justice, which is really finally being centered in the public discourse in energy policy circles. So those are sort of the overarching issues that are driving our efficiency and demand response policies in Connecticut right now. But just for a little more context on the climate side, this slide shows you what our climate goals are in Connecticut. So we have a goal of reducing emissions by 80% by 2050 and 45% by 2030. And that's economy-wide. Related to energy efficiency, we have a goal to weatherize 80% of the state's homes by 2030. And we also have an executive order issued by Governor Lamont to analyze pathways to a zero carbon electric grid by 2040. So we're currently working really hard on that in our integrated resources plan, which we're going to release in draft form in the next few weeks. So before COVID hit, we were already focused on improving our limited income programs. It was clear that we weren't serving enough homes, and those that we did serve were, largely not doing deeper measures such as insulation. So we made some changes that we thought, were sort of the first step to incentives and to eligibility requirements for the limited income programs in February, which I'll discuss on the next slide. But, we also know that we have to go beyond that, and we have to dig deeper into how outreach is conducted to various communities to increase adoption of our programs, and also to develop metrics and begin tracking whether our programs are really truly equitable on the basis of a variety of demographics, including race. So we're currently not tracking that, or how many minority business owners, for example, we serve. And we don't have effective means of reaching out to micro businesses or those within environmental justice communities. So we're getting ready to launch at Connecticut Deep a process to really dig in on those tough but really critical energy justice issues. And hopefully next year I'll be able to come back and share what we've learned so far there. A big part of that process is going to involve looking at our processes and the way that we've developed policies in the past, and the stakeholders and members of the public that we have and have not had at the table in that policy development, and how can we make our processes more accessible and meet people where they are. And so we're doing a lot of work on that, and we're actually we're going to be coordinating with the Governor's Council on Climate Change on that as well. So. In February, we approved the utilities annual budget conditionally based on a variety of changes aimed at achieving deeper decarbonization and doing it in a way that provided access to the benefits of decarbonization to those with limited incomes. So this is the month before COVID hit, and we were very focused on this effort. We streamlined eligibility processes by allowing people to qualify for the limited income program based on their participation in other programs that provide people with aid, such as our utility hardship programs or our SNAP benefit program. We also allowed for program eligibility for census tracts with 80% of people at 60% or less of the median income. And we developed a streamlined application for renters and landlords. For businesses in distressed areas, we raised commercial project caps to 80%, and we adjusted incentives in other ways that I'll discuss in a little bit. Oh. Okay, there we go. So that was February, and then March came along, and COVID hit. And the utilities, who are our program administrators for energy efficiency, discontinued on-site visits for the contractors in our residential and small business programs. I think it was maybe March 17th when that letter went out to our contractors. And by March 20th, we were hosting a webinar with our contractors to gather their input on immediate measures that we could put in place to help sustain them through a work stoppage with, at that time, a very uncertain time limit. That was at the beginning. That was just the beginning of a very intensive engagement process that we engaged with them on. We worked with other state agencies and the governor's office to provide webinars to our clean energy contractors on available state and federal aid. And I think a very significant portion of our contractors ended up accessing the PPP, for example. We conducted a survey to track the impacts of the pandemic over time and determine contractors' most pressing needs to stay afloat through the work stoppage. And we issued a series of determinations that included measures to help improve cash flow for really all contractors, but especially C&I contractors, and to cover administrative costs and health and safety compliance for the residential and small business contractors. And finally, we engaged in an interactive process to develop health and safety protocols for the contractors to return to on-site work in July. And our contractors are now back to work and ramping up activity. And with the help of some increased incentives that I'm going to describe next, I'm hearing that program activity has definitely increased. And so we're going to be tracking that. We're waiting for a filing from the utilities at the end of this month to see how our adoption rates are going. And if we need to tweak things, we'll do that in response to that filing. So before the pandemic, as I mentioned earlier, we increased residential incentives. And some of what we did there is we increased incentives for insulation and for heat pumps significantly. And we prioritized heat pump conversions for electric resistance heated homes. So those incentive increases will help all customers, but especially low to moderate income customers who tend to be a higher proportion of those who have electric resistance heated homes in Connecticut. We also required the utilities to develop an incentive for control systems to manage heat pump integration with existing backup heating systems, which, in Connecticut, given the cold weather in the winter, in many cases, if we're installing heat pumps, the customer is retaining the backup heating system. But we want to ensure that we're getting the greenhouse gas reductions in the winter months as well. And it's so hard for customers to be able to manage, two different heating systems. So we wanted to make sure that we're not just incentivizing air conditioning, but also getting our greenhouse gas reductions in the wintertime. For business customers, we increased lighting incentives and per project caps, and we also increased incentives for more comprehensive projects. So if they installed more than 3 measures or 3 measures or more, they got a higher incentive. Significant to COVID response, we approved a 6-month payment deferral from the installation date under our Small Business Energy Advantage loan to give businesses some additional bill relief for a period of time for measures that they installed before having to begin repayment as sort of an economic stimulus, as well as we also gave them extended loan terms to improve their cash flow. We also broadened eligibility requirements so that more businesses could receive 0% on-bill financing of small business projects. So these are just some of the things that are up next for us on this slide. There's still a lot of work to be done. We're committed to developing a collaborative, inclusive, and responsive public process. The changes we have made in the past several months were achieved through a very intensive collaborative public process with meetings occurring biweekly at first and now occurring each month for both the residential and commercial contractors, just so that we can make sure that we're being responsive to their needs and to the needs of customers as well through this economic and health crisis. So there have been multiple rounds of notice changes and requests for written comment, and we've tried to really listen and incorporate feedback that we've received from our contractor community and our customer community, while ensuring that the programs are still achieving our goals. We need to capitalize on the momentum that we've built to ensure that the clean energy industry that we've worked so hard to build in Connecticut not only survives, but is really central to the solution for economic stimulus and recovery. And we also have to figure out how to take our processes on the road to ensure that we're bringing to the table people who've been historically underserved and overburdened by the energy policies of the past. So with that, thank you for having me here today, and I'm happy to hear from our next presenter.
Okay, thank you very much, Vicki. It's exciting to see all the things that Connecticut is doing to help address COVID and minimize the slowdown in their program activities as they try to reach their 2030 and 2050 goals. Again, if you have questions for any of the speakers, put them in the question and answer box. But we will move to our third speaker at the local level, Kim Havey from Minneapolis. Kim?
Great. Thank you, Steve. And good morning, everyone. Thank you to my co-presenters. It's really, truly inspiring to hear all the opportunities that have been created around energy efficiency and what opportunities we have going forward in the future as we really look at ways to improve people's lives and really to change our economy to one that is not dependent on fossil fuels and other damaging pollution. This is a really great opportunity for us to really think about what we can do differently than we have been doing over the last 100 years and to make a greener, cleaner future. My name's Kim Havey. I'm with the City of Minneapolis Division of Sustainability, and I'm here to talk about just a few of the actions that the City of Minneapolis is taking to continue our good work continuing our good work on energy efficiency, really in light of the tremendous health, economic, and social disruptions that are caused by COVID-19 and the killing of James Floyd earlier this year. And I'm going to move the slide forward here if I can. Sorry about that. Are you able to see the slide, the next slide? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. So there are many actions the City of Minneapolis has taken in response to the current events and to plan for a more racially and environmentally just future. I'm going to focus on just 4 of those actions that we've led in the Sustainability Division to reemphasize the need for environmental and racial justice. One, we're looking at putting a much greater priority on investing in the people living and working in our green zones. I'll talk a little bit about what that means and what our green zones are in just a moment. We're, number 2, looking at changing energy efficiency practices in response to COVID and the need for social distancing. We're looking at several similar kinds of activities that were mentioned by our previous speaker in regards to Home Energy Squad, visits, energy evaluations, and support for contractors that do that particular work. We're looking at pursuing programs such as inclusive financing that can truly be a game changer for low-income, Black, Indigenous people of color, and renters. Investments that support economic recovery based on best practices around energy efficiency, resiliency, and sustainability will be part of this program and will be available for the first time to people not based on their ownership status, not based on their credit score or their access to capital, but on the needs for energy efficiency in the home that they either own or rent. And then really looking at how we take policy to a new level and reprioritize and center the community in the development of our policies by requiring community engagement early and often, such as we have recently done within our new sustainable building policy. So what is a green zone? A green zone is a place-based initiative aimed at improving health and economic development. It's using environmentally conscious efforts in communities that have faced cumulative effects of environmental pollution, as well as the social, political, and economic vulnerability. We started the green zones a couple of years ago, and our intent here was to really figure out how we can engage residents and understand what those barriers are to accessing energy efficiency, renewable energy, improvements to the health and welfare of their community, and how we can combine the efforts we're doing with weatherization, Lead in Healthy Homes, many other state, local, and federal initiatives. So we focus on equity when we're talking about the green zones. And we need everyone to participate in helping us reach our goals for 100% renewable electricity for our community, 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, and opportunities to be accessible to everyone regardless of the barriers and challenges. We really want to look at why there are so many cases in which this continued access has been denied to many of our communities, and really be able to point to ways that we can address that. The fact that in Minneapolis there is a fully supportive and very environmentally committed leadership, yet we still have a lot of barriers, and we still have a lot of disparities, especially by race in our city. This really points to the systematic racism that still is firmly in control of many of our local, county, state, and federal level policies and programs. And we really, I think, need to take the opportunity now to pause and ensure that we are putting racial disparities as a top priority in all of the policies that we're developing. Our goal with the green zones is to create opportunities for those who have historically been left out of the process and are facing those barriers to participation in energy cost reduction and energy efficiency programs. If we're able to design successful programs for those who have the most barriers to participation, we will make a program that works well for everyone. Sometimes this is referred to as human-centered design or universal design or equitable access, but what we are really striving to do is change the focus of the planning and policies that we're doing, one, from a greenhouse gas reduction and something that in many cases cannot be relatable to people, to one that is really relatable to folks, and that everyone understands how they can participate in a greener, cleaner future. So this slide shows the a map that was created for how we designated the green zones in Minneapolis, and it shows the cumulative impacts on neighborhoods in Minneapolis based on many factors such as poverty, race, and air quality. These communities were also some of the first to be impacted by unemployment and, of course, the social disruptions that many of you saw and the world saw here in Minneapolis. The cost of many of these social disturbances is significant. While it has not been added up, what the total impact and damages just on the property damages and loss of business revenue, the losses are in excess of $500 million. So this is an extremely detrimental hit to our city and to our communities and the residents. And we've been really working both on the day-to-day needs, but also looking at how in the aftermath city investment and support can be prioritized within these green zone communities, and understanding how we can get a better sense of what the needs are and reprioritize our particular policies, programs, incentives. So we've engaged foundations, our utilities, community organizations, and many others to prioritize the response in these communities, which are the most significantly impacted from the COVID as well as the racial justice issues. And we are really reprioritizing this as we develop our 2021 budget, which we're in the process of doing right now. So next I want to talk about something we've practically done, which on our virtual home energy squad visits. On average, Minneapolis has had 1,200 in-person home energy squads on an annual basis. This came to a very sudden stop in March as much of the city transitioned to address the COVID-19. We were not doing anything in person as the whole country really was impacted by this. So in the month that followed, we met with the Center for Energy and the Environment, who does our home energy squad visits, as well as our utilities, and we worked with them to rapidly ramp up a training and technology program in a matter of weeks, in which the home energy squads could be offered free and virtually and we started this process in May. The funding that was provided provided by the City of Minneapolis, but also redoubling investments by CenterPoint Energy and Xcel Energy in the SWIFT program change. And that included buying the technology to be able to do it, the software, and of course doing the training for the more than 45 Home Energy Squad auditors who do the work on behalf of CEE and our utilities, cities, and our residents. So when life changed due to this, the COVID, CEE and the city decided that it was really time for us to provide a fast-track solution and one that was no cost. So we waived all the fees for the participants to get in this, and we've seen quite a bit of success in there. We've now done over 400 virtual Home Energy Squad visits since May. So as people are shifting to situations where they're working from home, it remains a priority for people to examine the ways in which we can reduce energy use in our homes and, of course, have the positive benefit of a healthier, more comfortable home. And in Minneapolis, 65% of our homes are built before 1960, and that means that we did not have any insulation requirements for those particular homes. And so many of our homes, and certainly the older they get, the less insulation and efficiency they do have. Thinking longer term, we're really excited about a program known as inclusive financing. The City of Minneapolis has intervened in our CenterPoint Energy rate case in front of the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission to propose a $50 million inclusive financing program over the next 3 years that will open up access to the over 50% of our city's residents who are currently not eligible for energy efficiency programs. These include renters, for example. These include, as I mentioned earlier, folks who don't have easy access to capital. This includes folks who may not have a high credit score. And it includes education and training efforts and outreach that we're going to be engaged very closely with local-based organizations to spread the information and education about the access to this program. Technically, an inclusive financing program is used to finance home energy upgrades as a utility investment and is recovered through a charge paid by the utility customer. The key features of inclusive financing are that it allows us to reach both homeowners and renters. The charges that are made on this carry through with the meter and are not connected directly to any of the persons taking that inclusive financing out. So it is one that can be taken out, and the benefits accrue to current as well as to future residents of that particular home. In this case, we would be the first major city and the first large-scale investor-owned utility, though Georgia Power is looking at this as well, to participate in an inclusive financing program. The very interesting features of this is that there's positive cash flow beginning in month 1, and that payments are capped at 80% of the expected and annual energy savings. The cost recovery period is also limited to 80% of the expected useful life of the installed measure, or a maximum of 12 years. And then finally, just to touch on one of our policies that are in place right now that we're updating as a result of the work that's going on with in response to the COVID and racial justice issues. And that's really looking at our policies, such as the sustainable building policy. We declared a climate emergency in December of 2019, and as part of that, the City of Minneapolis Council made a staff direction to improve the sustainable building policy, to put it on a longer-term path towards net zero energy, and to refocus our efforts on equity. And one of the things that we're doing as part of that is for all of our enterprise and city-funded economic development projects, we are going to be prioritizing a process to put community first, engage early and often with community as part of the requirements of the sustainable building policy. We're looking at ways that we incorporate more human-based and human-centered metrics within the achieving of these particular policies, including home comfort, and looking at things like cumulative air pollution, the addition of air pollution impacts of development in areas that are already above standards that would be considered healthy in Minnesota. This has not been done before. We've only really looked at what the individual impacts of a building are, not really the cumulative impacts of where it sits within the nearby community and that particular site. So we're in the early stages of focusing on this. We're in right now doing some community engagement and really working with BIPOC residents in Minneapolis in order to really understand how we can put in those human-centered metrics as part of this and not simply focus on some of the more technical aspects of greenhouse gas emissions, but how we actually help people achieve a healthier and higher quality of life. And if we're able to do that, we will be able to really achieve our greenhouse gas emissions. Because as I said earlier, the ability for us to solve our climate crisis is the ability to overcome the barriers for those who have the greatest challenges, for those who have been the most impacted. If we're able to do that, we will be able to achieve a participation from all those who don't have those extra barriers, that do have the ability to participate more actively. And we need everybody to be able to make a difference, to participate, to take action, to reduce their energy use, reduce their energy bills, create a healthier both indoor and outdoor air quality, and create a more resilient community through the use of greening, carbon sequestration, and a more walkable, low carbon transportation system. So with that, I will close and say thank you very much for the opportunity to present and speak today, and I will stay through the rest of the session for questions and answers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kim. We appreciate it. And again, please add your questions to the queue, and I'll start asking those in just a minute. But first, I wanted to be clear, because there's quite a bit of chat going on, that it was George Floyd, not James Floyd, who was killed by the police, and who we are honoring and trying to make sure it never happens again. And
I apologize if I misspoke. Sorry.
Yeah, a lot of people noticed that. Picking up on that, one of the questions specifically to Representative Tomko is that you ended your presentation by mentioning the need to move toward a more just and equitable society. And the questioner is curious what this means to you in a general sense, but also more specifically in terms of energy efficiency.
Well, I think that we need to make certain that energy efficiency reaches all neighborhoods and all communities, and certainly all of our areas of diversity across the great USA. I think set-asides in some of the programs, making certain that our tax policy rewrites will and reauthorizations will be inclusive in that they focus on the systemic nature of the injustice that has existed out there. I think there's a great opportunity for us to take at least 4 dynamics that that are expressed as crises these days, and use that as a confluence, be it the energy crisis, the climate change crisis, and the efforts for rebuilding our economy, responding to climate change, and the COVID pandemic challenge, all of which are can be wrapped around, I believe, in the efforts to solve the crisis on racial injustice. So as we incorporate all of that, I think it's making certain that programs reach all neighborhoods, all peoples, that we address the systemic impact to the negative that has been out there for neighborhoods and people of color and indigenous people, But I think it's a great opportunity. It's no denying that we've taken a great economic hit here, and we need to build back stronger and more efficient and more robust as an economy. And I think we can do that given the challenges that have been presented over the course of the last year that takes some of this back decades, if not centuries.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And picking up a little bit on what you just said, we have several questions for Vicki. First, in this era of significant state budget deficits due to COVID, how were you able to increase funding and incentives for your programs? Do you think you can sustain it? That's the first question. And the second question is, can you elaborate on how Connecticut programs streamlined eligibility for low-income customers, and are there strategies that you might recommend to other states?
Yes. We had a little bit of an opportunity to increase incentives given that there was a work stoppage for a few months. And so there was, for a few months, our residential and our small business programs weren't really operating. So that created, a little bit more money that we could use to create short-term incentive increases. And in the short term, what we did is I think we doubled the incentives for replacement windows for upgrading from double to triple pane. And we waived the fee that we usually charge, not for limited income customers. They don't pay a fee, but for regular home energy solutions customers, just to access our audit program, which also includes some, weatherization services. So there used to be a $75 to $125 fee, and we waived the fee so that it's free for people to just sign up to participate. Our more long-term incentive changes were to make insulation much more affordable. For some houses, it's no additional cost for insulation, because we really were seeing a trend of people just doing the initial audit and not following up with the deeper weatherization that we really are going to need people to do, especially as we move toward electrification. Our analysis showed that it is going to be sustainable and over time, and that was a change that we made to the budget overall. Not just a temporary COVID change, but it did become sort of useful as we were responding to the economic slowdown, right? It's kind of a useful way to get out and help people save money on their overall bills, and it provides a little bit of economic stimulus and bill relief to people who are really facing some hardship economically out there right now. So we do see that as a sustainable change over time. I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
It had to sorry, I was quickly getting the next question.
I think it was streamlining eligibility. So
yes, thank you.
For eligibility, so this is, I think that in the past, what we had was a process whereby people had to fill out a lot of paperwork if they wanted to be eligible for the limited income program. And, when people are really stretched thin in, trying to work and earn a living and pay their bills, and they have all the stressors of everyday life that are magnified for many of our folks of limited income, I think streamlining eligibility has to be a priority if we want, to help them leverage the benefits of the energy efficiency programs. So what we did was we did a few things. We allowed for census tract eligibility. And I think I talked about that a little bit in my presentation. So people within certain census tracts are just automatically eligible. We also really streamlined the application process for people who are not within those census tracts, who aren't automatically eligible, by just, all they have to do is show that they're already participating in another program that's run by our Department of Social Services for people of limited income. And that could include, SNAP benefits or heating assistance through LIHEAP or our energy hardship programs, which if they're in the energy hardship programs, that's really easy for our program administrators who are the utilities to just check and see if they're, coded as a hardship customer. So, and then we also have a streamlined application for renters and landlords. Because we still see that as, it's one of the biggest nuts that we have to crack. And I mean, I've been doing this in one form or another in different positions. I've only been in my current position since last August, but I've been involved in energy efficiency in Connecticut since 2006. And this is just the problem that's so hard to solve, right? So we streamline the application, but I think we have a lot more to do in that regard. And I think, some of that is going to be working with, associations that represent landlords and bring them to the table with sort of incentives in order, I think the installation incentive, for example, is going to be helpful. But I think another big part of that, especially in our environmental justice communities and limited income communities, is going to be coming up with ways to address the barriers to health and safety improvements, because in Connecticut, our housing stock is really old. We have a lot of asbestos. We have a lot of knob and tube wiring. And once we run into those barriers, it's very difficult to do any further efficiency measures. And so one of our biggest challenges that we're really digging into now, and I mean, have been trying to for years, but we're going to be more laser focused on this, is how to address those barriers so that then we can do the efficiency measures.
Okay, great. Thank you. Have a couple of questions for Kim Havey. People are very curious about the inclusive financing. And questions are, how are renters able to participate in this? What's the process for getting building owners approval? And also, what happens when a renter moves? How is that dealt with?
So how it works is that there's a requirement for a consent from the property owner to make those improvements in the property, but they can be initiated from the renter, and then there's support there to work with that property owner in order to fill out a straightforward consent form. The meter that it's related to would be, for example, either the gas or the electric meter that the renter is actually participating in, or that actually they're paying for. And so the investment and the financing is related directly to that particular meter. So the process is basically filling out and completing some online forms and support from the property owner, and then the standard energy evaluation is done on the property. The goal is to be able to actually do, obviously, the entire property and to make that come together. So there will be some coordinating on that particular issue. It is probably not as much of an issue with our single-family homes, and in many of our communities, and certainly within the green zones, we have the majority of our single-family homes being rented. And in Minneapolis, over the last 5 years, actually, we've moved from a majority homeowner community to a majority rental community, even though the many, or the majority of our housing units are still single family or duplexes. And then what happens on the bill is that savings, you take 80% of the savings, so there's still 20% that's reducing the actual energy cost to the program participant starting in month one. And that energy savings continues on for future occupants of that housing unit. And those folks experience that savings, but they also do pay for those energy efficiency improvements up and through the useful life, 80% of the useful life, or a maximum of 12 years. Okay,
great. Thank you. I think we have time for maybe one more question each. We'll see if we can do any more. Representative Tonka, first, thank you for your leadership in supporting cities through the Energy and Conservation Grant program, block grant program. Now, the question is, the House passed a contingent appropriation for fiscal year 21, is that correct? And also, what else can we expect to support? A continued strong role for cities in climate strategy?
Well, basically, I think, our appropriations process is still continuing. So we're still working on those. And, the House has been tremendously successful in sending stuff over to the Senate. But again, they have got to move on these appropriations bills. But I think the real big issue right now for our local governments is passage of a stimulus bill that, and ours is holistic. We look, yes, at revenue sharing, a rescue plan for states, for cities, for counties, towns, and villages. They are swimming in red ink. And it is important for us to recognize that these are crisis situations, that the pandemic has driven down revenues of the coffers of all these levels of government through no fault of their own. And if we're going to provide stability, then we can go forward and address a lot of these other programming efforts. So our bills do incorporate the block grant efforts, the weatherization programs, all of these other concepts that can inspire and incentivize investments in energy efficiency, but without the stabilization factor of providing for, in our bill in HEROES, about $1 trillion for state and local governments. There are hefty price tags, but you know what? Economists on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats alike, and the head of our Federal Reserve, the chair of the Federal Reserve, have all indicated the cost of doing nothing is far greater, that we would perhaps do permanent damage to our economy. So I think, the connection of COVID-19 stimulus legislation here, along with very focused and targeted efficiency programming for our states and local governments, needs to be a package. Otherwise, we can't go forward and assist in the efforts to decarbonize and grow a clean energy agenda.
Okay, thank you. We've had a number of questions for Vicki about the health and safety guidelines. I'm sure you have several pages of it, but in a nutshell, what are some of the key things that you are doing in Connecticut so that contractors can safely enter homes?
So that took us some time to put together. But it was very much a collaborative process between us, the utilities, the contractors, and the governor's office and the Department of Economic and Community Development, who, they had been working on the back to work protocols for other industries as well. So we incorporate a lot of the work that the governor's office was doing on back to work protocols into our energy efficiency, health and safety protocols. So, a lot of it is pretty, what we would see now as being pretty common sense. Everybody has to wear a mask. All contractors wearing masks, all residents wearing masks, except maybe for very small children. We ask that they not have more than 2 contractors sharing a vehicle, 2 workers sharing a vehicle, and really ideally try to have 1 worker per vehicle. And if they had 2, that they should be socially distanced and wearing masks within the vehicle. Gloves within the home. We gave contractors a stipend, a little extra money to pay for PPE and also for disinfecting. So we required them to disinfect the surfaces, before they leave the home. And to also ask residents and business owners before they show up, either, the day of, the day before, or before they walk into the building, if they're experiencing any COVID symptoms. And a checklist to go down for that. And if so, obviously, you turn around and you don't do the work there that day. And then we had that same requirement for contractors as well, that if they had any COVID symptoms, they weren't to come into work. There were a variety of other things as well. We started off with more restrictive PPE that the utilities really wanted them to wear, including coveralls and N95 masks, but given the summer temperatures, there was, the contractors were not really happy about that, and also thought that it was more prescriptive than what the state was requiring for other businesses, which was true. So, we worked with the utilities on that, and they agreed to have PPE measures that were more consistent with those that other industries would be following. And there were other things as well, but I think that covers most of it.
Okay, now thanks for the overview, and I'm sure if you let us know what the website is with the details, we can pass that on to people. Okay, final question, and this is one for Kim. As he well knows, we are in the midst of the greatest racial justice uprising this country has seen, sparked by in Minneapolis by brutality against the black man George Floyd. This was not, the first time that Minneapolis institutions have had these problems. For example, black people are 2 to 3 times more likely to contract and die from COVID. The question is, what are the assurances that Minneapolis is giving that it is doing a deep internal assessment, inviting communities of color to decision-making process, and starting to right these inequities?
Well, it's an excellent question, and I want to just apologize to everyone for misstating George Floyd's name. That was certainly not intended. I apologize for that. The city of Minneapolis is looking very deeply at not only our police institutions, but really our other institutions, including all of the different departments that we're working in, and really taking a look at our particular policies. We have convened a group on racial equity and policy change that is led by our Vice President of the Council, Andrea Jenkins, and our Commissioner of Health. This is a community-based organization that are convening that meets weekly to talk about what are the types of things that we need to have that we, rather than having a police officer be called to a particular issue or dispute, what are the kinds of things in which we can provide more community-based services. This is a focus not only of this particular group, the health department, sustainability, but also part of our charter commission and how we are establishing and what are the requirements and what are sort of the components of a police department. As you may have heard, we have the majority of the council in support of really changing our police department into one that is much more of a community-based police department. This is an effort that's going to be continuing on for some time. Obviously, it's not going to change overnight. But what I can tell you is that we have begun a very deeply engaged process with communities of color on many of our issues, and we are really relooking at all of our major policies and programs, including our climate action plan programs and policies, our community policing, the work that we're doing on how we're delivering healthy, sustainable communities, and the support that we're doing on that. It's not something that we have the answer for, and I don't know if there is an answer for it, but we are willing to lean in and participate and support the actions of the community and the desires of the community. Minneapolis is interestingly enough, like I said, a very progressive city in many ways, but we still see that access and barriers and racial injustice continues to exist. And this has really, I think, woken us up as both city leaders and business leaders in the community that what we've been doing has really been reinforcing the same systematic racism that's going on, and we really need to look at things differently and really make some significant changes in how we do decision making and who benefits from the investments and the programs. And I know I'm committed to doing that through updating our climate action plan and really engaging on our policies to make sure that community engagement and input is priority one, and that we really lay down some metrics to really understand. And I know Vicki mentioned this too. We don't have a lot of metrics on how things are, who's really benefiting, and we've been lack and being targeted other than on some of our programs to the communities that really do need that particular help. But we're going to really be changing that, and we're taking the time to really focus on that, and we are going to continue, and that'll be continuing to evolve over time.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. Yes, I know these are difficult and challenging issues. They've been going on for centuries, but enough is enough. And good to hear that Minneapolis is trying to do a lot more. And I know many others, whether it's Connecticut, the federal government, or many of the audience members, including ACEEE, are trying to do a lot more to address these systematic issues. With that, I'd like to conclude this session. Thank you all. A couple of little final announcements. One, I know some of you are trying to donate and had difficulty. We're having some problems with the widget, so we'd encourage you to try again later or go to the ACEEE website if you'd like to donate to the Linda Latham Scholarship Program. I'd also remind everybody or tell everybody that at the end of the conference, we'd really like you to fill out an evaluation. This is our first virtual conference, our first large one, and we really want to learn from you what worked, what didn't. I guarantee there's some of both, so that we can do better, particularly as long as we have to do virtual. But ultimately, there'll probably be some mixed virtual and live stuff. So we really would like to learn from you. With that, please join me in thanking our speakers, and the next session will begin at 1 o'clock. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.